All right, thank you so much for joining us. We are now live and continuing our round-the-clock coverage of the power shutoffs with PG&E.
Here's what's happened this evening. We heard from the governor and the CEO of PG&E. We learned several counties have been cleared to get their power back, but the process will take time, maybe even days. And we have had reports all over Northern California talking to communities about the impact they are feeling from a business struggling to make money in the dark, a rancher trying to find a way to feed his horses, get them water, and the big question that impacts every single person impacted by this event. What are the odds you could ever get compensated for the largest power outage in our state's history, Madison?
Yeah, so let's take a look now at the outages right now, because things have been changing as power. Some areas are getting the all clear to start that restoration process. But right now, we do know power has been restored to 228,000 customers and 440,000 people across Northern California. So right now, if you would like to have this map sent to you, any other information about the power outages sent right to your phone, all you have to do is text the word power to 916-321-3310, and we'll send you that link directly. We'll also leave that number up at the bottom right corner of the screen throughout the entire show. Yeah.
We want to clarify that the 440,000 is people without power.
Without power, yep.
440,000 customers, I assume that means without power. We also had the Governor Gavin Newsom, said that PG&E chose not to modernize their grid, and it led to their own demise, the governor said. He said these shutoffs happened because of neglect. And this is what he said when our Brandon Ritterman pressed him on the issue.
Governor, the entire narrative that you gave us at the beginning of this of PG&E having decades of mismanagement, neglect, all driven by greed. I asked a PG&E rep about this very thing today. You know, it's all your equipment being unable to stand up to these conditions. This led to this. Correct. And so why wouldn't you compensate people for, say, losing a fridge full of food? And they called that backward looking and said it's all about the climate. So they're telling the exact opposite story of what you are. I guess I'm wondering, you know, do you feel like PG&E is taking its role in all of this seriously, and what would you say?
Well, they better. I mean, look, as you know, part of our reforms includes tying compensation to public safety. That was something that came out of our legislative package, which is, I think, profoundly important, meaning incentivize for good behavior, not incentivize for bad behavior. As it relates to compensating people that have been impacted, I believe they should be compensated, and we will pursue that. They have not made a determination, to my knowledge.
They told us they won't.
They made that to you. They said something differently to us. So that's to be determined. But I believe that people should be, and that's why I think they should be very copious in terms of their note-taking to make a determination of their impacts because of the size and scope and the time associated with this. So none of that is satisfying, what you just said, based upon your specific conversation, and you know, is not inconsistent with past practices. And we are encouraging a better path forward, and we're trying to incentivize it through compensation packages.
I think a lot of their customers think PG&E carries itself around as though they're untouchable.
Well, they're not untouchable, quite the contrary. They're in bankruptcy. They're in peril of not existing. So quite the contrary. I think the evidence overwhelming that that's not the case. And to the extent that there's new management team, there's a new management team. There's new leadership. I think I've worked with at least 4 CEOs in the course of my few days. I don't know who PG&E is. It's an entity. It's a corpus. But the individuals, they seem to come and go. And so that's what we're all struggling with. And that's the opportunity, perversely, of a bankruptcy process and procedure, is to make sure that we address all of these ills from the past and make sure we do not replicate them moving forward. And so, look, the sentiment that you're expressing is one I share.
Oh, man.
Our Brandon Ritterman having a pretty heated back and forth conversation with the governor. They are trying to get your questions answered about how do they plan to make people whole after this experience?
Yeah, because they're talking about the fact that it's either between a choice of hardship or public safety. And then the hardship is so evident, right? We're talking about so many people still without power to this moment that we're now live with you all, hopefully getting through to you through your cell phones in some capacity. We are listening to your comments and your conversations too, so keep keep those questions coming. But a whole lot of frustration in that room tonight.
We have to point out Cal Fire also addressed the media in that news conference tonight, saying in 48 hours they responded to 476 fires.
That is incredible.
Unbelievable, right? And so this was indeed a big weather event. We know that we saw the red flag warnings. It was something that Monica had been warning about for days. And so we do know that firefighters have been busy in the past 48 hours. Even Sacramento firefighters were saying they had, I thought, like 48 calls for service when it comes to fires. And so this has been a busy weather event.
And we're not over. Red flag warning is still extending, you know, so we're not done talking
into
about
tomorrow.
Right, into tomorrow. So we're not done talking about these fire conditions. Really, everyone watching right now, highly recommend you have a plan in place. You know how to get out if you live in an area that obviously has a high fire risk, but even areas like Sacramento could also see a grass fire unfortunately take off and really get into neighborhoods that we never would ever see a fire before.
So we heard from the governor, but PG&E executive spoke publicly today saying with the winds they saw the past 24 hours, they did not want to risk public safety.
So in this event, the fuel content of the vegetation was at critical levels, very dry, humidity very low. And of the 33 counties that were affected by our action so far, at least 21 had wind gusts above 45 miles an hour, and at least 15 had wind gusts of above 50. And we saw peak wind gusts at 77 miles per hour in this event. So we faced a choice here between hardship on everyone or safety, and we chose safety. And I do apologize for the hardship this has caused, but I think we made the right call on safety.
That is the take from PG&E, as you were mentioning, saying, look, they had a tough choice, but they wanted to go the route of safety. But here's the deal. He also, in that very same news conference, said he admitted, hey, we could have done some things much better.
Yeah, speaking of which is their website crashing, which Newsom even called out too, saying, I think a reporter asked him, do you think PG&E is handling this correctly right now? And he said, well, if your website's not working, then no. How are you able to get information to people who are your actual customers who pay for PG&E's bills? So then, you know, again, this is inconsistent with the maps, the call centers being overloaded in terms of PG&E's website. So, you know, the CEO is admitting that they were not adequately prepared to support this size of an event, and they're working to improve the situation.
Interestingly enough, they also told us that we heard that state workers were coming in to try to help them get that site back up today. Look at this. The most significant fire happened in Southern California today. This is the Sandalwood Fire in Moreno Valley in Riverside County. I mean, it is just always heartbreaking when you see at someone's home there.
So tragic.
That is going up in flames. We still don't have an official number of how many homes have burned, but there are several because this was a mobile home park. I think that
mobile home park, and it was. We were watching it live unfold, and really all these embers kept just kind of landing on the roofs, and therefore then igniting more structures. But as we were reporting earlier, definitely dozens of these mobile homes are destroyed tonight. So sad to see this. Obviously, the winds really playing a big factor here. 30-mile-an-hour winds with more gusts on the way. So right now, the latest, we actually just got a tweet from Cal Fire about the Sandalwood fire, and they say that it's actually 10% contained. So that's some good news to report tonight. Yeah, and 500 acres is the latest acreage on this number too.
As Madison is mentioning, they are working to create those containment lines around the fire using planes and helicopters. And if that wasn't enough, there's also a second fire firefighters are dealing with in that area. Up north, this fire started on San Bruno Mountain earlier today. It started near a transmission line, mostly burning grass. In this area, PG&E did not have power turned off. You can bet they'll probably point to examples like that as reasons why they're doing what they're doing. And take a look at this wildfire that sparked overnight in Moraga. Yes, it burned about 40 acres and caused evacuations. And at last check, it was mostly contained. That is some good news. The red flag warning, though, I mean, that was something else. And I know that's why we want to get over to Monica, just to look at what are conditions now, Monica.
Winds are calming down, and they will continue to calm down through tonight and into tomorrow. Places that still are going to have that red flag warning are included in the areas shaded in red. Now, the entire Bay Area is out of that red flag warning region. You can see that until 9 o'clock tonight, the entire valley will continue under red flag conditions. Occasional gusty winds, but it's mostly the low humidity. All that wind that we had really dried out every piece of fuel that we have throughout the valley. And then it will continue until 10 a.m. for the foothills and parts of the Sierra as well. We're not really seeing a whole lot of wind, but again, what we're finding is that fuel is so dry. The focus area right now, you can see we've got some colors up on this map here, and that's going to be where we see some of the stronger winds. It's not really anything like what we saw last night or the night before, where we were seeing a whole lot of reds and even some purples up there. This is what it looked like yesterday when we were looking at those sustained winds. These are the peak winds from today, and closer to the Vaca Hills near Davis, Dixon, Woodland, even for Fairfield and Vacaville, gusts were approaching about 40 miles per hour, but you were hearing that we did have some isolated pockets where those gusts were even higher than that. So I went ahead and pointed these out here. This is just a general map of the 24-hour peak wind gusts, at least 24-hour, almost midnight, really, until now. Placer County, 53 mile per hour peak wind gusts. El Dorado County, 46. Sierra County, though, just north of I-80, we actually had a 59 mile per hour peak wind gust. Over towards the Bay Area, we check in with Solano County, 48 mile per hour wind gusts. And then for Oakland, 52. Keep in mind that we had that fire near Moraga last night and early this morning. I should say this morning, because it was technically this morning, but they were dealing with gusty winds in some pockets around that region during that fire. Lake County with a 51 mile per hour peak wind gust, but I did know, I did see that there was one closer to about 70 miles per hour. Again, we were just finding some isolated areas where we would get a real quick gust. It wasn't sustained or anything, but we'd certainly had some occasional dangerous situations. As far as what's going to happen for tonight into tomorrow, winds really backing off. We'll still see them out of the north to northwest and east winds for the foothills and the Sierra. Those are very dry winds. Also for the Bay Area, San Francisco northeast winds, again, very dry. Humidities are not really going to recover all that much. They're going to stay fairly low even into tomorrow. And temperatures, especially for the Bay Area, will be unusually high. We're going to be close to about 80 degrees all across the Bay. So the fire migration happens like this. It was really focused in Northern California over the past couple of days with the highest fire danger. Now that extreme danger starts to move its way south, we already saw several fires breaking out earlier today in Southern California. Unfortunately, wind is going to fuel many of those fires, at least through our Friday, because the weather pattern is set up for those Santa Ana winds, those offshore winds that accelerate through the hills. They're dry and warm with the explosive fire growth. This is where we're talking about right here as we head throughout Southern California, with red flag warnings actually in effect for them through tomorrow. And this will be the entire coastal area heading inland into Friday, gusts up to 65 miles per hour. And this is particularly concerning, this 4% humidity. It's not all areas, but we're going to see some regions in Southern California with as low as 4%, some indications of about 3%. That is just bone dry. There's no moisture there at all. That really helps to get these fires going as well. So now we really start to focus as we start to head south into tomorrow.
And, you know, Monica, talking about that red flag warning, several small fires across Northern California were quickly put out today by firefighters. This fire in Vacaville was contained to just a grassy field along Leisure Town Road, Madison. Yeah,
thank goodness firefighters were already in place to prevent that one from spreading any further. And Vacaville is an area where so many homes are affected by these power outages. We know Solano County is in the all clear tonight, so therefore PG&E is going to start doing the restoration process out there to look at those lines, double check them. But earlier today, when the power was still out and people are still frustrated, understandably so, Lena Halland talked to some homeowners today.
As you can see, this is all the cords that you have to do when you have a portable generator. You have to run them outside for safety reasons.
This is Rick
This
Higgs.
is a charging area for batteries, cell phones, what have you.
And this is his second day without power.
You got cords running everywhere in the middle of the night. They're nice tripping hazards.
It's really an inconvenience. It's like camping in your backyard. And then at night it gets really dark because you have no lights.
Luckily, he has a generator, which he's been using sparingly.
Kind of run them in, cycles. You got to conserve your gasoline, so you got to have enough of that around, because the gas stations don't have power. They can't pump. So, you know, you got to prepare for a lot of stuff.
I've checked the filter.
But his neighbors aren't so lucky.
Just can't figure it out.
Jim Zeiger has spent the past 2 days in the dark trying to get his backup generator up and running again without much luck.
My generator, I've used it a lot, but it's been sitting for a long time. So I go to get it and it won't start. So I'm trying to get it going, figure out what's wrong with it. So otherwise, we have candles to light the house.
You know, others are really having a struggle because they're so used to having technology to help them. But for me, it's been fine.
Orchard Elementary School next door doesn't have power either, yet they're choosing to keep their doors open.
Well, it just keeps learning happening. It keeps your routine going, and children, for the most part, are better in routine.
Haven't been using technology, but we've been making it work. We've been using papers and all of that. It's like a normal day. We just all work together and help each other out with it. If we can't see, we help each other read it.
Everyone keeping their hopes up that the lights will soon come back on.
If you are just joining us live, we are continuing our live coverage of the breaking news that we've been following for several days now. CC, we thank you so much for joining us. CC saying, how about if they shut off my electricity this month and I don't pay my bill this month? Sounds fair to me. A lot of folks agree. One thing that they have said is that they are not going to be charging folks during this time.
Makes sense.
It makes sense, right? If the power is out, you will not be billed for this time frame. I don't know about the whole bill for the month, but they did say that
it'll
during
be
the
interesting to
time frame.
see. Yeah, we're interested to probably follow up with several of you who do get your bills after this entire shutoff situation is over. It'd be interesting to kind of compare and contrast what your bill looks like now versus what it looked like a month ago when none of these shutoffs were happening. Obviously, a lot of people still in the dark tonight. We're well aware of that. Following up and asking PG when power is going to be restored, because we know a lot of counties actually got the all clear or a partial all clear from PG&E to start looking into restoring the power by looking at those lines. This is a process, though, that's going to take some time. Obviously, a process they can't do in the dark. So that's another important keynote here to make.
That's the thing that's so frustrating, you know, as they begin the process. We were telling you right now, power has been restored to 228,000 customers. But even with that, 440,000 customers are still in the dark tonight. They've given they've given the all clear for several counties, but as Madison was pointing out, they cannot go and inspect the lines at night, so they have to wait until daybreak to get back out and start doing their work. We are getting some reports of places telling us that they are even still seeing some power come back on tonight.
Yeah. Our Tracy Humphrey just said in Auburn, her lights came back on, so that's good news there.
Right?
I know, we're getting some other reports, I think, gosh, I'm forgetting now. Just the moment I was about to say it, it just went right out of my head.
But the thing is, though, that was so frustrating, at least last night anyway, was that people were saying their neighbors didn't have power, but they did. And so, you know, that is one report. We can't speak for the entirety of Auburn, but at least we know our Tracy Humphrey is saying that her power is back on there in Auburn. Meanwhile, the impact of this outage has hit the foothill communities hard. Placer and Nevada counties have suffered lost revenue from the PG&E shutdown. ABC 10's Kurt Rivera went to Nevada City.
At Mom's Kitchen in Auburn.
My freezers are doing pretty well.
At Mom's Kitchen in Auburn.
My freezers are doing pretty well, to tell you the truth. Right there's one here. Doing pretty well.
Owner Mick Pappas is so far so good with his freezer and fridge full of food.
One on the right-hand side is thawing out a little bit, but I'll ice it out, but it's doing okay as well.
He lost power to his restaurant midnight Wednesday and needed a hand restocking ice.
Oh, it's not too bad.
His losses, 150 to 200 customers a day.
Ballpark, you're looking at, Kurt, wow. Maybe 1,000 a day. Yeah. And my employees as well, they're losing their wages. Yeah, so it's too bad for them. It's a shame.
But there are places that are still open here in Auburn, including this Ace Hardware store, all thanks to this generator. Inside, batteries going fast. 20 generators sold out. The shop to fix generators buzzing.
Mostly running generators, keep all the computers and everything up and going. Yesterday we had to do all cash sales because we couldn't run cards. But other than that, just walking around with flashlights, helping customers find what they need.
Customers like Mark and Diana Boatwright came in for a power cord and were grateful the store stayed open.
Having a store open that you can come in and get what you need during I don't really want to call it a crisis, but during a situation such as this, it's great.
Yeah, okay, well, we're just getting another question coming in from Sybil Caston asking if there's going to be any more power outages that are not already part of what's going on right now. And PG&E mentioned that in their news conference tonight, too. They answered that question.
Right, they were saying that if you have not had your power turned off up until this point, they did not foresee you losing power. The challenge is that we, as Monica was mentioning, the red flag warning has been extended for some places. And so you hate to say, no, you won't lose power. And then y'all say, well, Chris said, I'm just telling you that the PG&E statement was that if you have not lost power up until this point, you should not lose power now. But let's go over to Monica to look at those red flag warnings and where we stand as far as conditions, Monica.
Yeah, so let me go back to that real quick. I was going to talk about smoke, and I'll get to that. But there's a couple of key points that I do want to make here. I'm just kind of dragging some things around right here. So here are the red flag warning areas that are going to be extended now until 9 p.m. for the Valley, until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for the foothills and Sierra. And some folks are saying, we haven't had wind since the beginning of this event. Why the heck do we still have red flag warnings up in the foothills when we've seen winds, 5-10 miles per hour overall? Well, when you look at the power grid throughout not only Sacramento, but extending all the way through the foothills up through the Sierra, you can see it's highly concentrated here in the Sacramento region. But then we get these lines going up through the foothills with some of those big transformers up the hill. So it's not necessarily the lines that are running through and they're pretty sparse. It's the transformers that may be higher up the hill. Now, in particular, when you look at the highest fire danger, it is heavily concentrated in the foothills and the lower Sierra Nevada. So all of those areas that are under that red flag warning haven't seen a whole lot of wind. It's right here. Here's that stretch right here that we're really hearing from a lot of people that are just quite frankly frustrated. And I can't say I blame you. I get it. But transformers up the hill can, if something were to come down up the hill, it would send everything downhill, especially with the wind direction that we had. They accelerate as they move down and they warm, and that eventually results in explosive fire growth. Now look at this. We have the same situation going on in Southern California with Santa Ana winds and those offshore winds. So you again see those highlighted areas right down here, right along the coast. And that area too will also be in the red flag warnings for an extended period of time. Largely in part for their power control is going to be Southern California Edison, but PG&E, almost the entire area that is under obviously those power outages is in that high fire risk area. And then you add in, not only do we have the dried out fuel, but fuel that always exists there, and that is the dead trees. We've got 147 million dead trees in that specific area. So we always have these little matchsticks that are potentially going to light up. And then you add those strong winds, at least not, I know, in your area, but you have them uphill, and that can send a lot of dangerous fire growth down the hill. Okay, I mentioned that we also have those red flag warnings in effect for Southern California. That's the area that, again, has that very high fire danger. I want to circle back, though, to what I wanted to talk about, and that is the smoke that we were seeing a lot of for today. We didn't necessarily smell it a whole lot. Some of us did if you were just up the hill from Sacramento, but we had the hazy skies. This was earlier today. And when I saw this, I went, okay, what is going on? Is that dust? Is that smoke? Didn't really hear of much outside of a few grass fires for last night and even this morning. So given the wind direction, it just wasn't making sense to me. I thought that it's got to be something up the hill that's heading down our way. So then I found this. This was around the Kirkwood area earlier today. And then when I started to do a little bit more digging, I realized that there is a prescribed burn going on just along Highway 88. It's called the Caples Prescribed Burn, and it actually has been going on for 10 days. I saw this on Sunday. We tried to make some calls, tried to get a better read on it. We weren't getting much information, but then when I saw this, in addition to all of that, this is our satellite imagery. So here's the fire right here. You can see a very thin plume of smoke heading towards Placerville, Folsom, El Dorado Hills, Roseville. And we were hearing from folks in Roseville, we're seeing and smelling smoke. What's going on? Which is a scary situation when you're in a red flag warning, right? So this is the Caples Prescribed Burn, flared up a bit for today with high winds and low humidity. And then when I started talking about this, people said, why the heck would they do a prescribed burn when we have red flag warning conditions? Excellent question. I'm glad you asked. Well, it's actually part of a larger scale project. It's going to be a multi-year project here. What they did is they actually stopped doing any active burning over, I think that was Tuesday was the last day that they did any active burning, but there were still areas that were smoldering. So a little bit of heat and some wind and dry conditions allowed that to flare up once again. Now they've got a great perimeter around this controlled area. Haven't really heard that this is out of control or anything like that. And I was actually seeing the smoke come down just a little bit once the wind started calming down. But again, we are going to continue to unfortunately deal with all this smoke heading into the valley until that is done. I also heard from people in the foothills who were really angry that they're not only dealing with power outages, but also the smoke. They're like, really? Can we catch a break here? We can't open our windows to let in some fresh air, so we have to keep the doors closed. It's warm. We've got smoke outside. I mean, could we make it any worse for people in California right now? All right, at midnight, here's the burn area right here, and then we have the Brisbane fire also going down towards Yosemite. That's going to be filtering through the valley, and it gets a bit thicker early tomorrow morning and then just kind of tamps down a bit, and the winds will shift. It will help to alleviate some of the smoky conditions. Some of the foothills, though, are going to have to deal with this at least through tonight and into early tomorrow. But can you believe that? I mean, power outages, then we got the smoke. I mean, come on.
That's a bad combination for so many people.
We may need some better planning here. Yeah.
I know, and that one maybe could have been avoided, especially when you're talking about some of these planned burns and things of that nature. There is a bit of good news, though, huh?
Yeah, we do have some good news. We just heard from Tracy Humphrey, another meteorologist here. She lives in the Auburn area. Again, we did mention that power is back on in Auburn, and we can confirm, according to Daniela Pardo, another reporter of ours, up in the downtown Auburn area, the lights are back on in Auburn. Penryn also. Loomis and Newcastle all have power right now. So, of course, if anyone watching is in those areas, if you want to send us, I wonder if we could start that, like a picture of your power back on and maybe a smile or two. That would be nice to share for so many people dealing with this power shutoff for days now.
It would certainly be a nice way to start the Friday for so many people. But understand that still, thousands of our neighbors are without power, and we still have a time frame that they're working on where they don't know when they could see their power back on. So there's not a great deal of celebration at this time. We're just trying to let you know that they are slowly but surely starting to restore power, because they said that they were moving away from shutting off power to try to now turn power back on.
And that process is going to take some time.
It will. The other challenge, of course, is, well, what about food that will spoil? The power that went out has impacted so many people. We talked about businesses. We talked about people who had generators or fuel that they were trying to keep running. Many people wanting to know. We're seeing here on our Facebook page, Daniel even saying, when will they give back some of the campaign contributions that folks took from PG&E? Some of our politicians, if you will. Folks want to know, are they going to get their money back, especially for some of the items that they lost during this power outage? And our Mike Duffy looked into that question.
Many people have been asking us if they're going to be able to get any money back from PG&E for costs associated with these power shutoffs. The short answer is no. PG&E has a policy of not reimbursing customers for losses during public safety power shutoffs. A PG&E spokesperson told us, when we do these shutoffs for safety, we typically do not reimburse for claims. She also told us people are welcome to submit a claim and they'd be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Still, history teaches us not to get our hopes up. After the wine country fires in 2017, 147 claims were filed. 102 were for food loss, 25 for business impact, and 19 for property damage. PG&E rejected all those claims. They do operate a safety net program to reimburse customers who go without power for more than 48 hours due to a severe weather event. Payments range from $25 to a max of $100, depending how long your power's off. But they say these PSPS events don't count. Even then, this only applies to residential customers, not businesses. They do have a service guarantee program which will pay customers $30 if they weren't notified 3 days ahead of time. But guess what? This doesn't apply to serious emergencies or conditions that affect safety. So you still might want to consider filing a claim, but just know history and policy is not on your side.
Oh man, and some families have gone days without power. Getting it back is such a moment of emotion and relief for so many people. Our Britt Moore was a mom in Vacaville, was with her when she learned that life was getting closer to being a little bit more normal again.
Power just came on. Yes, we got power.
Man,
finally.
you know how good that feels right now.
Especially when you have kids and they're used to watching TV and their little devices, and man.
The touching thing about that moment we're hearing is that this meant a lot to that family because they have a child who needs medical care and they depend on electricity to take care of their child. And so if they went much longer, they were concerned about what they were going to be able to do to make sure that their daughter got the care that she needed. That's the challenge that we were talking about with these power outages. But you start getting past 2-3 days, especially when you, some of the forecasts that they were saying 5 to 7 days. I mean, you are talking about life-changing events for so many families.
Absolutely, and not a lot of people, unfortunately, have generators and whatnot, other areas or other ways to make power happen in your house without power and without this uncertainty of knowing when your power is going to even come back on. She's in Vacaville, so that's one family out there.
I should tell you too, for those who still do not have power, that PG&E does have resource centers in the community communities that have lost power. They are free places to go to charge your phone and to get some AC. They have room for about 100 people at each location. I'm hearing there are at least 30 of those, and they will be open. They're usually open from 8 in the morning to at least 6 at night for as long as those outages last. Coming up tonight at 11 o'clock on the LNT, we're actually hearing about churches who are now kind of stepping in the gap and saying, well, okay, that's nice you do it from 8 to 6, but what about at night for people who need assistance? They are now stepping in to try and help. And so we've got some crews who are working to learn more about that, and we'll bring you that at 11 o'clock. But at least those will be additional resources for people at nighttime once some of these resource centers close. Because I tell you, you get in these blackout conditions, as we heard from some law enforcement members last night, it becomes challenging to drive. They're asking people to stay off the roads. It really becomes a safety issue for the community.
Dangerous for so many people. We were hearing of a lot of traffic accidents happening in and around our areas that were without power. Just imagine driving, again, when it's incredibly windy, that's so loud. So therefore your focus is on how loud it is outside. And then on top of that, you can't see. So of course, police departments were hoping people were just staying off the roads, not flooding the 911 call system as well. But we haven't heard of any major accidents caused from this. And we're talking about,
that is good news.
Ones that actually caused some major injuries or deaths even. So we haven't heard of any of those. That's great news that people have been heeding those warnings pretty well. But again, when it's the power's off, you want to stay off the roads.
That's right. Tens of thousands of people without power are in Placer County as well. And as we roll through here, I wanted to let you know that includes people with ranches. Our Kevin John was looking at how this is impacting folks who have animals that depend on power as well.
What a shock.
Yep. That is the mood at JR Ranch as they try to get by without power for the second straight day.
We're definitely going through some changes as far as to accommodate everything and making things still work here for the horses especially. They need water, and our well, which is run by a pump, needs electricity to pump the water. So what we've done is, unfortunately, not having the well water, we changed over to irrigation water, which is filling up all their water feeders.
Rich's ranch sits on 5 acres, and he and his wife care for 12 horses here. 3 belong to them, and the other 9 they take care of through their boarding business.
The owners, of course, these are their babies. They're entrusting us to make sure that they're well taken care of. So a lot of them did have concerns over that, and I told them about what we're doing with Plan B, with the irrigation water, taking care of that. So they're They know that we're on top of it whenever something comes up with their horse, so they didn't really have any fear.
Rich gave me a tour of the ranch and showed me how they use the irrigation water to fill their water feeders. While the ranch has been able to function just fine without power, Rich is counting the hours until the power comes back on.
I understand it's not PG&E's fault, but it's aggravating, totally aggravating.
Interesting enough, Madison, we just got a comment. Karen,
Yeah.
we thank you for joining us tonight. Karen was saying, look, folks, after the campfire in Paradise, there are still people 10 months later that have no power. And she says, think about their misery, not occasional discomfort. And, you know, she makes a good point. One of the reasons that we are even having this conversation, one of the reasons that we are even seeing this happen is because of the campfire.
Campfire was unprecedented.
And the lives that were lost following that horrific event, the most destructive and deadliest fire in California history.
Absolutely.
And so PG&E, they're facing court orders to take actions. When the winds get to a certain speed, they have to show that they are doing something to prevent the type of catastrophe that we saw just months ago.
Right.
And so we thank you so much, Karen, for providing that perspective. It is something that we all have to keep in mind. I tell you, but I think, Karen, the challenge that people have is when you are the 5th, 6th largest economy in the world, California in the world, that type of money and power that exists in this state. And when you have an instance where our meteorologists have been forecasting these conditions, we've been warning of these conditions, and you mean to tell me that this is perhaps the new normal, where you just cut off power to entire communities for miles and miles and miles, hundreds of thousands of people have to just be in blackout conditions? That is not sustainable. PG&E said that is not the type of experience that they expect folks to have, that they're in the business of providing power, not taking power away from people. And so
they cover 47 counties, so that is a large amount of our state. Again, it's quite a monopoly situation. And so therefore, if this is going to be the new normal, we've got to come up with a better plan.
And they acknowledge that. You know, the latest county to get hit with outages is Kern County in Central California. They are bracing for dangerous fire conditions. That's in addition to the 400,000 customers, as many as 1 million people. That's the thing we have to point out. When we talk about customers, that's not accounting for all the people that are impacted.
That's a bill, that's the meter, that's not a household of 5. So again, when we say 800,000 initially, now it's down obviously to a different number, but it's still a lot more people than just the hundreds of thousands of customers.
1 million people without power right now, even as we speak. Check out this map. You can see here the counties being impacted. The most, Nevada, which has more than 43,000 counties without power. Placer, 51,000 customers without power. El Dorado, 50,000 customers without power. Madison?
Yeah, and Solano County has about 30,000. Tuolumne County has about 34,000 customers affected by the power outages. You can also see on this graphic that 23,000 customers in Calaveras County are still dealing without the power tonight. They're in blackout conditions. Again, some of these counties have been given the all clear. We want to make sure we're letting you all know about that, because that is a big update. You know, when the weather has passed, so to speak, PG&E says that's all clear, or it's a partial all clear, and we're trying to figure out what that really means. Partial all clear is vague. It doesn't really mean much to us.
Gives them some cover.
Yeah, but it doesn't really say much, right, in terms of what that means. So for them to go then inspect those lines and turn the power back on, and PG&E was saying they did find some damage to some power lines when they did their news conference not too long ago. So of course we're trying to get more information about that and what these all clear motions mean when the power can be turned back on, hopefully.
Rosalind is saying that she was in a position where they did not have cell phone nor landline service. Couldn't call 911 if she needed to, she said.
Wow.
So they had to go to the fire station and use their phone at the fire station to call the family to let them know that they were okay. Rosalind, we thank you for reporting in tonight about what you were experiencing. This just goes to show the type of things that folks were experiencing over days.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I mean, Rosalind's in Orinda, that's really close to Moraga, too. So that's where that fire was, the Merrill fire that was starting earlier this morning around, I don't know, what,
We
2
were
a.m.?
live on
Yeah,
air
we were
at that
live
time.
at 2 a.m. or at 3 a.m. even, talking to you all about that fire. So that totally makes sense why she was trying to call someone to say, we're okay.
We're okay. You want
right.
to notify your loved ones.
That's
Keep in mind, 228,000 customers had their power restored today. The Bay Area was given the all clear. There we go, talking about that all clear, which does not mean power is back on, but that PG&E can start inspecting. We are told Humboldt County does have their power back as well, Madison.
Yeah, we're also hearing, I was from a couple friends of mine up in the Shasta County area, there's also power being turned back on in the Cottonwood area. So slowly these lights are coming back on, but still so many people without power tonight. Another area that got their power back around 2:30 today is San Joaquin County. We're hearing about some places again in Auburn, in Loomis, Penryn, Vacaville as well. We have our crews all over working to get updates on who is affected and who's getting their power back. Our Daniela Pardo was in the city of downtown Auburn when the lights came back on. So we're working to get some video for you to show you what that looked like from Auburn tonight.
Meanwhile, the CAL FIRE chief tweeted that they've responded to more than 200 fire incidents, and most of them are contained. This is video from last night's fire in Moraga that forced 140 people to evacuate. More fires popped up early this morning and throughout the day across the area. But quick action from firefighters has kept these fires from spreading, and that is the good news.
Absolutely, and especially because the winds we are hearing are starting to kind of die down, but it's not over yet. These red flag conditions are going to continue through tomorrow as well. So, Monica, if you have an update for us about the winds, the current situation for some people, because I know some fires are still burning at this hour. There's a lot of people wondering about the smoke, too, from the controlled burn. Not too far away.
A lot going on. You're right. Still, I know that we have calm conditions right now throughout the valley. Still have those red flag warnings up until 9 p.m. In about 15 minutes or less, we're going to see those likely expire, and then they'll continue for the foothills and the Sierra. And I want to explain why we may see those extended for parts of the viewing area and not others. First, let's get to those gusts for today. We saw a big concentration of strong gusts in the Fairfield area, Vaca Hill, so Vacaville, Fairfield, Dixon, Davis, all very gusty winds. And then where you see this purple shaded area here, right along I-80, we saw some strong gusts right in that region there. Not so much along Highway 50. We certainly saw some gusty winds, but those were the two big focus areas along I-80, both in the Sierra and then along I-80 as you head towards Vacaville and Fairfield. Okay, so let's take a look at some other gusts here. You can see Sierra County with about 60 mile per hour peak wind gusts earlier today. Placer County 53, El Dorado 46, headed over towards the Bay Area. Solano with that 48 mile per hour peak wind gust. Oakland 52. We had that fire near Oakland, near Moraga specifically, break out early this morning. And so with weather conditions that we knew were developing at that time, it was really critical that everybody get right on that fire and get that out as soon as possible. Lake County with the 51 mile per hour peak wind gusts. However, I did see some monitoring sites that were approaching 60, almost 70 miles per hour. So here's how winds will progress through tonight. They're fairly calm actually through the valley even at this hour. And then for the foothills and the Sierra, you're going to notice that we actually have some coloring on this map, those contours. This is the area that will stay under that red flag warning. It's just that we have pockets in there that are still experiencing occasional gusty winds. Not terribly unusual for the Sierra or even the upper foothills, but at this point in the season, given how dry everything is, plus the low humidities and the east wind component, further drying anything that is available up there. If there was anything with some moisture, it's just going to dry it out heading into tonight. Extreme fire danger actually moves from Northern California down to Southern California, where they've been battling a couple of blazes down there. That will continue again through our Friday forecast, primarily because the whole shift of focus starts to make its way out of Northern California and move into Southern California. Pretty much the same weather event that's been going on here. Those offshore winds, they're called Diablo winds up north, down down south, Santa Ana winds with accelerating winds through the hills, dry and warm, explosive fire growth. These have been in the past some of our most destructive fires in California history hitting at this point in the season. Now, here's the area that we still have under the red flag warning, again, only for about the next 10-15 minutes in the valley. And then for the foothills, we're going to keep that going until 10 a.m. The fuel is still very dry. Any little bit of spark could spread very quickly, even without the addition of some winds. This is a look at the power grid, and you can see the transmission line. It is just a mess, basically. To try to make sense of this would take way too much time, but up the hill we have those bigger transformers, and when we look at some of the areas with the most critical fire danger, you're going to see that much of that remains in the foothills here. So even when we don't have those really strong winds, and I know many of us weren't experiencing those in the foothills, we still have such a high fire danger. So any little touch of additional fire element that could spread quickly is going to be enough to probably pull the trigger on pulling that power. That is the case as well for Southern California. Now, when we take a look at who controls the power grid, in Northern California, it's largely PG&E. Southern California is going to be Southern California Edison. And they've actually had power outages for years now, just based on those Santa Ana winds and how destructive the fires have been in that area. The other thing that we have to consider, too, is not only do we have extreme fire danger behavior in Northern California, especially the foothills and Southern California, but now we're adding in, after the drought, millions of dead trees, both in the Sequoia and the Sierra National Forest. We're talking about 147 million dead trees, and that adds additional fuel. And it's worse. The worst places are in the Sierra and the Sequoia National Forest, where you'll see a lot of these maroon dots here. Those are all the trees that have died from what's called the bark beetle. In Southern California, the red flag warnings go a little bit longer here. Gusts up to 65 miles per hour. Does this sound familiar at all? And humidity as low as about 40%. They're getting ready to evacuate. We've already seen structures destroyed, some homes earlier today, and those are the types of conditions we're going to see as well. All right, getting on to that smoke. Chris Thomas just jumped up. You thought I was ending. I still got more for you. All right. Earlier today, we saw the hazy skies. I don't know if you noticed also, looking at that sunset tonight, there was that reddish glow. If you happen to check out the moon, there's also just a hint of an orange glow around the moon. And here's why. Look at this. We had a prescribed burn going on in the Sierra earlier today. This has actually been going on for 10 days now. They stopped the active burning earlier this week, given the change in our weather forecast, but just a little hint of a breeze as well as low humidities. We had a flare up today. So you can see on our satellite imagery, the very distinct plume that we had coming out of the Kirkwood area. This was along Highway 88. This is called the Caples prescribed burn. Now, here's the deal. They've been basically setting this up and planning for this for years because they realized that they have not allowed any fire to burn since 1908. Okay, so everything has been growing since 1908. And what's happened is there's overgrowth, and now they even have a bigger risk of more explosive fire growth if they don't start to do something to bring some of that down. There's a lot of different agencies involved in this, even a water agency that goes all the way down the hill. So kind of taking care of that is what they need to do. This is a multi-year project. It's going to be over 8,000 acres that they're going to be dealing with this prescribed burn. This is just kind of the beginning of all this. And the smoke is just funneled right down the hill into the foothills and the valley. It wasn't like they wanted to continue this burn and put smoke into everybody's skies that were already dealing with power outages, but it was something that was already going on. They stopped it, put a nice perimeter around it. It just had some flare-ups for today, and now it looks like at least through tonight, we're going to have to deal with some of that smoke through early tomorrow morning. You can see some of the gray here, and we're going to still have some of that smoke moving through the foothills and the valley. And then we've got this smoke coming from the fire down by Yosemite as well, kind of feeding the Stockton and Modesto area. It does get a little bit better by about 5 o'clock tomorrow night, but for tonight and into early tomorrow morning, if you are sensitive to smoke, I'd just keep those doors and windows closed as much as possible and limit your exposure outside. It's the only thing we can really do right now until those winds really shift and scour everything out and they get better control of some of those fires up there. So that covers a lot.
I mean, you think about all the areas that are impacted by this. Monica, we thank you so much for trying to break it all down for us and give us some perspective on this major event. PG&E says there can be expectations to its policy of not reimbursing people for losses caused in a shutoff. Our Brendan Ridman caught up with PG&E spokesman Jeff Smith and asked for more detail.
If it wasn't strictly related to weather, but it was something that PG&E identified that, was a failure on our part, and not in terms of related to the weather, but something outside the weather realm, that might be a situation that could be different. But typically, when it comes to public safety power shutoffs, there would not be a reimbursement.
There's a pretty strong case to be made, though, that the whole thing is a failure on the company's part, right? The whole reason we're having these shutoffs is you haven't improved the grid to the point where it can withstand a weather event like this. That's kind of backward looking. I understand the frustration that customers are experiencing, and I understand that there are criticisms that folks have. In terms of hindsight and Monday morning quarterbacking, I understand that there are folks that will be looking at that, and I appreciate the fact that people have those opinions. Right now, our focus is on being able to restore customers as safely as possible. I don't think it is Monday morning quarterbacking. I think a lot of people out there have an expectation that the grid should be able to run safe in whatever weather California throws at it, and that just simply isn't the fact right now.
Well, there really has been changing weather conditions in the state of California with climate change and other factors that have contributed to all this. But again, I understand that there are customers that are frustrated and that have varying opinions on that. Certainly respect that.
Why should PG&E be allowed to keep its monopoly if this is how things are going to be?
Again, I think that goes back to the root frustration of customers. We know that customers are frustrated.
Dale, that was the line there.
Yeah, there it is.
We know you're frustrated. We know that didn't really answer the question, though. I think that's what this really boils down to. We thank you all so much for joining us. If you're just joining us now, we continue our live team coverage of what has been quite the event for the past few days, as hundreds of thousands of people have been in the dark because of this power shutoff. Jennifer is writing in saying, do you have a charger in your vehicle for those perhaps looking to charge their phones? And things of that nature? That has been an option that people have been focusing on. As a matter of fact, shortly we're going to talk about whether or not the vehicle can be used as a way to try and at least get some power if you need it.
Absolutely. And if you would like any of us to send any information to you, the outage map, as well as a fact of just like our most frequently asked questions, we have a whole list of that. If you just go to abes10.com/list, or you can just text power to 916-321-3310, and we'll text you back the links you need to continue to follow this. Obviously, get the updates you need to get. Go to PG&E's new website, which we are told is back up and running. Even though when we were told that last time, it still was not back up and running. So at last check, it is. But we have all that information we can send right to your phone, 916-321-3310.
Madison, let's take a look at some fires across Northern California tonight. The Merrill Fire in Contra Costa County, now 40 acres and 90% contained. That is some good news. That fire started this morning in Moraga, forcing evacuations. A fire on San Bruno Mountain burning dangerously close to transmission lines is now at least 50% contained. This is in the Bay Area city of Brisbane. There were voluntary evacuations there, we're told.
Yeah, and tonight evacuations are still in place in Mariposa County for the Bryceburg fire off of Highway 140, burning near Yosemite National Park. This has burned over 4,000 acres, only 15% contained rather. And this fire started over the weekend. I can say I just drove through that entrance to Yosemite and everything was bone dry. You were seeing burn scars too from last year with the fire that was burning in the national park. So it was something that I did make a mental note of, that it was just so dry, so beautiful in Yosemite, but still so so dry out and windy as well. So that fire again has continued to spread because of the windy conditions in this area. The Bryceburg fire again burning in Yosemite National Park or near it.
And if our team can begin to prepare that verify segment on the cars, that would be great, because I think that can really help people, especially those who are without power, to know what they can or should not do. Let's stand by. We're going to pause for some breaking news.
Get up-to-the-minute information during the largest planned power outage in state history, affecting 800,000 customers in more than 30 counties. Be the first to know breaking updates and alerts delivered straight to your phone. Download the ABC 10 News app now.
All right, again, for everyone joining us or already have been joining us, we are just reiterating what we know right now with the power shutoffs, the widespread shutoffs we've been talking about now. We are in day 2 of the pitch black, dark conditions for so many people as these counties continue to not have power. I do want to bring a quick update that we did get from PG&E. I just have it on my notes here, so that's why I'm going to read it really quick. But PG&E says 31% of its customers right now who were experiencing these power outage situations have power restored. 31%, so that's 228,000 out of 738,000 right now. So that's just, those are just customers again, people who pay the bills, the meters. That's much more than 31% of customers. That's millions of people too. So again, we're going to continue to bring you the updates throughout the hour on when certain areas are getting their power back on. We know Auburn, Loomis, Penryn, Vacaville, parts of other areas too, but those are the main ones that we've been talking about as of the last hour.
We continue our round-the-clock breaking news coverage tonight. We will have live team coverage throughout the evening. Here's what happened this evening. We heard from the governor and the CEO of PG&E. We learned several counties have been cleared to get their power back on, but that process will take time, of course, possibly even days. And we've had all our reporters all over Northern California talking to communities about the impact they are feeling from a business struggling to make money in the dark. We heard from a rancher trying to find a way to feed his horses and get water for his animals. And of course, the big question that impacts every single person: what are the odds you could ever get compensated for the largest power outage in our state's history, Madison?
Yeah, so let's take a look now at that outage map we have been showing you now for several days. Again, all the shaded areas are areas and communities that were initially told they will not have power, part of the power outage with PG&E. Again, some of these counties are seeing power turn back on, but this is the outage map, the current outage map that we have been showing you. If you would like us to send this directly to your phone, we can just text power to 916-321-3310. And we can send that right to your phone. So we are, hearing from a couple people, some interesting comments coming in. It looks like Michelle says, I don't know, I say, let California burn and turn the power back on. Well, there's a problem there if you just let California burn. So,
We're talking lives here.
Lives. This really is serious, and it matters a lot because firefighters are working around the clock.
Yes.
We were told, let's see if we can pull those notes back up, how many fires were started in the last 48 hours. 476 fires in the last 48 hours in the state of California, and that is just CAL FIRE's numbers. Those are the ones just our state agency has responded to. And again, a lot of those they were able to keep relatively small, but there are more.
Because of our firefighters' quick actions.
And 46 fires were contained at 110 acres. So that's significant. 110 acres is not a small size fire. Again, their goal though is to keep all the fires that they ever have to respond to 10 acres. But we do have the one that is burning right now in the Riverside County that is serious. There have been homes lost, a mobile home park, nearly all the homes there destroyed in some capacity or completely gone. So yeah, we are really taking this seriously. Of course, no one would like to see a campfire situation, a car fire situation, the Tubbs fire situation. Those were lives, that was property, that was towns.
And this is a 2-year anniversary of the Tubbs fire. All of this happening around the same time.
We hear you, Michelle. Of course, the power being turned back on is the goal here, but this is a serious situation.
Very serious, and we saw that today from the governor. He was very forceful resourceful. He said that PG&E chose not to modernize their grid, and it led to their own demise, he said. He said these shutoffs happened because of neglect, and this is what he said when our Brandon Ritterman pressed him on the issue.
Governor, the entire narrative that you gave us at the beginning of this of PG&E having decades of mismanagement, neglect, all driven by greed. I asked a PG&E rep about this very thing today. You know, it's all your equipment being unable to stand up to these conditions. This led to this.
Correct.
And so why wouldn't you compensate people for, say, losing a fridge full of food? And they called that backward looking and said it's all about the climate. So they're telling the exact opposite story of what you are. I guess I'm wondering, you know, do you feel like PG&E is taking its role in all of this seriously, and what would you say to
Well, they
them?
better. I mean, look, as you know, part of our reforms includes time compensation to public safety. That was something that came out of our legislative package, which is, I think, profoundly important, meaning incentivize for good behavior, not incentivize for bad behavior. As it relates to compensating people that have been impacted, I believe they should be compensated, and we will pursue that. They have not made a determination, to my knowledge.
They told us they won't.
They made that to you. They said something differently to us. So that's to be determined. But I believe that people should be, and that's why I think they should be very copious in terms of their note-taking to make a determination of their impacts because of the size and scope and the time associated with this. So none of that is satisfying, what you just said, based upon your specific conversation, and you know, is not inconsistent with past practices. And we are encouraging a better path forward, and we're trying to incentivize it through compensation packages.
I think a lot of their customers think PG&E carries itself around as though they're untouchable. And
Well, they're not untouchable, quite the contrary. They're in bankruptcy. They're in peril of not existing. So quite the contrary. I think the evidence overwhelming that that's not the case. And to the extent that there's a new management team, there's a new management team. There's new leadership. I think I've worked with at least 4 CEOs in the course of my few days. I don't know who PG&E is. It's an entity. It's a corpus. But the individuals, they seem to come and go. And so that's what we're all struggling with. And that's the opportunity, perversely, of a bankruptcy process and procedure, is to make sure that we address all of these ills from the past and make sure we do not replicate them moving forward. And so, look, the sentiment that you're expressing is one I share.
If you are just joining us, we continue our breaking news coverage of this unprecedented event where at one point as many as 800,000 PG&E customers were in the dark. Cal Fire addressed the media in that news conference, as you were saying, and they told us that in just the past 48 hours, they responded to 476 fires.
That is significant. That's a lot.
PG&E executives spoke publicly today, too, saying with the winds they saw the past 24 hours, this was all about safety.
So in this event, the fuel content of the vegetation was at critical levels, very dry, humidity very low. And of the 33 counties that were affected by our action so far, at least 21 had wind gusts above 45 miles an hour, and at least 15 had wind gusts of above 50. And we saw peak wind gusts at 77 miles per hour in this event. So we faced a choice here between hardship on everyone or safety, and we chose safety. And I do apologize for the hardship this has caused, but I think we made the right call on safety.
All right, and Chris just stepped away just really quick to check something. He'll be right back. And there he is. Okay.
Yeah, this is very casual.
Yeah, we were just doing this on Facebook Live, YouTube, and everything else. Of course, we're welcoming your questions and comments. We would like to know what you would like us to look into for you. Of course, we do have a lot of those questions answered already on our website, but we have an entire team behind us working to get those questions answered. We have reporters out in the field who are covering this right now for us. They're really right now kind of chasing the PG&E crews who are trying to get the power back on. They're also chasing the areas that are hopefully anticipating the lights to turn back on. That's obviously
some reports of that.
Yeah, that's obviously great news for a lot of people. But they're also talking to those who are still in the dark tonight, because now it'll be more than 48 hours for some people being in the dark tonight. That is significant. That starts to, you know, I mean, it's already frustrating, but after it becomes a little bit more of a way of life,
Right.
It really can start to overwhelm a lot of people too.
Shirley, we thank you for joining us. Shirley saying, I feel sorry for people going through this. You know, Shirley, one thing that we're doing for tonight at 11 o'clock, we actually have our crews who spent some time with PG&E looking at that process. What are they doing when they're going out and they're inspecting these lines, and why does it take so long to get the power back on? A lot of times you've seen the headlines, but we want to go beyond the headlines and take you there on the ground so that you can see for yourself what PG&E is doing. We ask the questions that you have, so if you have questions that you want answered, you let us know, and we'll take it right to the folks in power to get some answers for you. You know, the other thing that we were trying to get answers on was that website that kept crashing, the inconsistent maps and the call center being overloaded, and the CEO of PG&E admits they were not adequately prepared to support the size of this event, and he claims that they are going to work to make some improvements there. Meanwhile, take a look. Our crews were in downtown Auburn tonight as the lights came back on. The cool thing about this is that before, only the lights were coming from cars, right? You see there? And street lights are now coming back on as well, we're told. Placer County says that at the start of the shutoffs, 150,000 people did not have power there. Auburn was completely blacked out, but now at least the lights are flashing, you know. Those are dangerous conditions. PG&E crews are starting to inspect power lines, and they're turning them back on, and as I was telling you tonight at 11 o'clock, you'll see firsthand how that process is going.
And so now we're going to turn to a couple fires that broke out today. These pictures are devastating to share with you all. Just take a look at your screen right now. You're looking at the Sandalwood fire burning in the Riverside County area in the Moreno Valley. This is the most significant fire that happened in Southern California today. Again, dozens of homes in this mobile home park destroyed. We were watching this unfold on live TV from the helicopter down there in Southern California, showing us these images from above. Firefighters, you can kind of see them through the smoke there in some dangerous conditions, trying to make sure that these mobile homes, the fire wasn't going to spread to any more of them. But again, at that point, you really just have to evacuate and get all people out. There's really not much firefighters can do when a fire looks like that on a mobile home. You can't save that. That's already gone. So they were really not trying to exacerbate much of their efforts, of course, trying to save as many as they could. But as we were watching this live, Chris, it was wild to see just how quickly one little spark could end up on the roof of the other and then start up another fire again. It was so tragic to watch unfold. Again, this fire is 500 acres right now, 10% contained, according to CAL FIRE, working on that.
Up north, this fire started on San Bruno Mountain earlier today. It started near a transmission line, mostly burning grass. We're told in this area, PG&E did not have power turned off. And take a look at this wildfire that sparked overnight in Moraga. It burned about 40 acres and caused evacuations. At last check, it was mostly contained. Let's check in on the red flag warning currently in place. How are conditions now, Monica?
Well, it just expired here, so I am updating this graphic as we speak with the red flag warning conditions, because you can see a big chunk of this is now out of the warning area. So the red flag conditions are improving for the valley. However, the foothills and the Sierra still dealing with the red flag conditions with gusty winds and low humidity. Now, gusty winds, not so much the problem. It's the low humidity at this point. Fuel is still very dry, not to mention we have millions of dead trees throughout the Sierra and the Sequoia National Forest. So this is in place. This was what was going on today. Had a prescribed burn that started 10 days ago. It was up in the El Dorado National Forest near Kirkwood along Highway 88, just north of it near Caples Creek. We're now hearing that it's become a wildland situation. They are potentially calling in additional resources. It's over 2,000 acres, about 150 people on that fire right now. CAL FIRE may be getting involved, but it was sending smoke into the valley. Now, why did it flare up? They had a good perimeter. Well, unfortunately, we had some gusty winds. Take a look at some of these winds we are dealing with in the Sierra. El Dorado County, 46, 53 for Placer County. Sierra County, 59, close to 60 mile per hour peak wind gusts. So with the low humidity, the gusty winds, they said we had a bit of a flare up for today. And this is the satellite imagery that shows you how that smoke was coming out of that fire, pushing out towards the foothills and the Sierra. Just hearing from somebody on Twitter who mentioned back to me when I said, oh, here's the reason why we got the smoke. They said, not only is our power out, but we had smoke so thick, ash was falling in Pollock Pines earlier this afternoon. And again, it's because of this right here. So the Caples prescribed fire, this is the situation we are following right now. It flared up today with high winds and low humidity. And this is becoming more of an active situation than it was, say, even yesterday or the day before. I actually saw this on Sunday from one of the Tahoe cameras. I said, wow, what is going on up there? But we couldn't get a whole lot of information because it was a prescribed burn. And they were just burning, and then they'd control it, burn, control. And this is going to be a multi-year project. This isn't like we're just doing this today and yesterday and then all of a sudden we're done. It's all because of all the overgrowth there. They're really trying to do some fire mitigation, some fuel behavior management. But you can see it was sending smoke all the way down the hill with those east winds. Those east winds, unfortunately, can also fuel a fire and get it moving pretty quickly. It's at, what did I say, 2,000 acres, something like that right now. So we'll have to continue to monitor that for tonight. As far as the smoke, how are we going to be feeling the effects of this? Well, we're still going to have that smoke coming from the fire. So even folks in Roseville, Lincoln, Loomis, Folsom, El Dorado, Placerville, Pollock Pines, even through parts of Elk Grove are going to have a bit of that smoke, as well as we've got the fire down towards Yosemite. That's sending some smoke into the Stockton and Modesto area. Heading into our midnight hour and early tomorrow morning, we start to see that smoke just kind of settling into the lower elevations. That's typical for any fire. You're going to see the smoke kind of settle down into the lowest places. And then for tomorrow afternoon, starting to thin out ever so slightly, except some higher concentrations right around that prescribed burn, because it did have a flare up. It's not like they're actively burning right now. I don't want you to think that, oh, in these weather conditions, they were setting fire. That wasn't the case at all. They actually stopped the active fire process. It's just that there were some smoldering spots that it appears popped up and flared up today. Current wind situation, they're calm. So that is some good news, but you'll notice right in this focus area right here, that's right about in here. That's where we have that Caples prescribed burn going on right now. There are some slightly breezier conditions. It's not like anything we were seeing last night, but we have some stronger winds than certainly here in the valley. And earlier today, I mentioned some of those focus areas with the winds, especially north of Highway 50 in Sierra County. We had close to 60-mile-per-hour peak wind gusts. Over towards Fairfield, Vacaville, Vaca Hills. Whew. It was really breezy last night. Our poor Brit, who was out there reporting for us last night, she was just getting knocked around. You could hear the wind just howling. Lights were out. Just a very eerie situation there, and it was because of those very strong wind gusts. As far as tonight through early tomorrow morning, fairly calm winds throughout the valley. We're not expecting much of anything at all. However, the wind direction, that's where we really still have some concern. It's still an easterly wind, very dry wind, and the red flag warning will stay in effect, it looks like right now, until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning for the foothills. So it's going to be just around the foothills and then coming over towards the coastal range as well. At that point, we will see the winds dying down. But the focus of that extreme fire danger heads towards Southern California, where we're already seeing some of those fires break out. It's the same weather pattern we've been dealing with those strong offshore winds. The high pressure system to the north, low, settles down to our south and east. And with those Santa Ana winds for tomorrow in Southern California, this is why we start to look at the resources. Okay, so maybe we had them placed up north. Now they might start to move down south, because these winds accelerate through the hills, they dry, they warm, and it results in that explosive fire growth. So this is really where we're going to be starting to look heading tomorrow for new fire potential. But again, we're going to keep a close eye on that prescribed burn because it now looks like possibly could be a bit more of an active situation.
Okay, Monica, we thank you for that perspective. You know, one thing that you're talking about is, even as we speak right now, that Sandalwood fire. I think we have a live picture we want to try to show folks
from
now.
Southern California.
From Southern California.
The Riverside area. The last check, 500 acres, I believe.
Right. Let's take a look if we can. This it's the chopper there getting over the fire, and we'll hopefully they'll move that camera around so that we can get a better look at how things are tonight. But do know that we do have cameras and eyes all across the area working to bring you a look at some of the things that we're experiencing here in the Golden State. You know, several small fires across Northern California were quickly put out today by firefighters. This fire in Vacaville was contained to just a grassy field along Leisure Town Road, Madison.
Thankfully, the firefighters in that area were already in place. They had a strike team kind of prepared in Solano County, so they were ready to respond to this quickly. And that's really what Lena said, according to talking to the chief on site, that they were already in place, thank goodness, and had crews ready to go to attack this one. Vacaville is an area where a lot of homes have been affected by these power outages. Some now have their power back on, some though still in the dark. Lena Howland is talking to some frustrated homeowners today.
As you can see, this is all the cords that you have to do when you have a portable generator. You have to run them outside for safety reasons.
This is Rick
This is a
Higgs.
charging area for batteries, cell phones, what have you.
And this is his second day without power.
You got cords running everywhere in the middle of the night. They're nice tripping hazards. It's really an inconvenience. It's like camping in your backyard. And then at night it gets really dark because you have no lights.
Luckily, he has a generator, which he's been using sparingly.
Kind of run them in, cycles. You got to conserve your gasoline, so you got to have enough of that around because the gas stations don't have power. They can't pump. So, you got to prepare for a lot of stuff.
I've checked the filter.
But his neighbors aren't so lucky.
Just can't figure it out.
Jim Zeiger has spent the past 2 days in the dark trying to get his backup generator up and running again without much luck.
My generator, I've used it a lot, but it's been sitting for a long time. So I go to get it and it won't start. So I'm trying to get it going, figure out what's wrong with it. So otherwise, we have candles to light the house.
Others are really having a struggle because they're so used to having technology to help them. But for me, it's been fine.
Orchard Elementary School next door doesn't have power either, yet they're choosing to keep their doors open.
Well, it just keeps learning happening. It keeps your routine going, and children, for the most part, are better in routine.
Haven't been using technology, but we've been making it work. We've been using papers and all of that. It's like a normal day. We just all work together and help each other out with it. If we can't see, we help each other read it.
Everyone keeping their hopes up that the lights will soon come back on.
And speaking of which, we do have some good news to report. After families have gone days without power, at least some are starting to get that power back. Our Britt Moore was with a mom in Vacaville when she learned life was going to get closer back to normal again. Take a look.
Power just came on. Yes, we got power.
Man,
finally.
you know how good that feels right now.
Especially when you have kids and they're used to watching TV and their little devices, and man.
Right there, they needed power to provide for their young daughter who has a medical condition. She needs the electricity to, to be okay. So incredibly important. It's great to see that family is back with their power back on tonight.
Well, that just goes to show you what many families are dealing with. This is life or death for some families, especially when you start going into 3 and 4. It is certainly you would not want to have to go through the weekend without having, because you're going into 4 or 5 days where people are without power, and sometimes the gas in generators, you start running out of gas. Battery life it becomes an issue for so many families, and so this is why we are starting to be happy to report that there are places where the power is back on. In Auburn, in Penryn, Loomis, and if we'll scroll through here, I'll tell you some of the other places that we have. Newcastle, if you have had any of your food spoiled because of electricity or things like that, people are so happy to start to see that the power is coming back on. I know Monica is working to give you some updates on winds here, because we want to know if this is happening, if we're starting to see some of these power being restored. Monica, do we think that the worst of it is behind us?
Well, yes and no. because I think there's so many people. I was just trying to answer somebody on Facebook, and they are just like, they're so mad right now. Even when the power comes on, I think they will take the edge off a little bit, but it's been days without power. I think that frustrations and anger is running very high right now. So the only thing that I can tell you is we have a lot of people here that are dealing with the same thing, and it's very close to them. They are trying to dig, get answers. I think this is just the beginning of a bigger conversation that is going to have to be addressed. I was listening to Brandon Rittiman earlier today talking about municipalities versus PG&E. You know, we've got SMUD, and that's municipality. East Bay MUD as well. They had power. So this is going to be a story that doesn't end once the winds die down and power comes on. That much I can tell you with assurance. Right now, we've got calm winds through the foothills, the Sierra, and even for the valley. Yet we still have power out. Doesn't make sense, right? So we are starting to see some trickling of power coming on, hoping that all of you get that power on when it's safe to do so, according to officials that are monitoring those lines. Okay, so future winds, what we have is unfortunately just this focus area right here that isn't particularly strange for this time of year or any time of year in particular. 80-50 corridor all throughout the higher elevations tend to get higher winds in general. That's just the nature of the game here with the topography. You've got elevation there. That's going to be the area that will stay under that red flag warning until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Winds really start to back off at that point, and everybody will come out of those extreme conditions, the red flag warnings. But right where that focus area is where a lot of those transformers are. So anything blows up there, heads down the hill. If any of those lines are active, that's where we run into problems. Even though downstream things are fairly quiet, it's the whole grid, how it's all wired, and that's really been the story that we've been covering, is this grid, and it's outdated, and we could go on and on, right? I'll let the officials do the talking on that. Okay, red flag warning. Like I said, that's going to continue until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Low humidity. Fuel is still very dry. Any little spark could spread very quickly given all the type of fuel that we have up there. We've been following this too, that prescribed burn that started 10 days ago, the Caples prescribed burn in the El Dorado National Forest. Actually posted this on Twitter and heard from someone from Pollock Pine saying, not only is the power out, but the smoke was so thick this morning. By this afternoon, we had ash falling. Okay, so now we got the power out and we've got ash. Not a great combination. But winds were actually gusting to about 45 to almost 60 miles per hour in that region right there. Again, that's not really out of the question to see those type of wind gusts, but it was just the direction was very dry and warm winds that could have possibly given to some flares. That's what they're saying right now, is that this could have flared up a bit today with those high winds and low humidity. And we were getting the smoke. You can see there's the fire right there, right around Kirkwood. Is just north of Highway 88. And then that east wind really very clear on this GOES 17 satellite loop from about, I think I put it in at noon through 4 o'clock because it's visible, so it's only available from sun up to sundown. Otherwise, I'd show you all the way through tonight what that's looking like. But the direction was pushing it all the way down the hill through Pollock Pines, Placerville, El Dorado Hills, Folsom, Roseville, Auburn, even getting in on some of that smoke. I don't know if any of you saw the sunset. It was spectacular. It was beautiful red glow, but that's because of all the particulate matter, the smoke, and once that sun comes down, really lights up the sky. We had a bit of a glow around the moon too, but this is going to stick around with us all the way through tonight into tomorrow morning and then kind of thin out as we head into tomorrow afternoon. But until they get better containment on that fire, we're still going to have to deal with the smoke. So that may take us through our Friday, possibly even our weekend, because we've got this one too over towards Yosemite, and that one's over 4,000 acres.
We're talking about a lot of smoke heading into our area. We're already, like you were just saying, people were commenting and letting you know, Monica, this is a frustrating situation to have ash falling as well as no power. So a surprise when you go out to your car and you like, what's on this? I can't even see what I'm doing.
Or you have no AC.
That
you have
too.
No air conditioning. You want to let, open the windows, let in a little bit of that fresh air, and you dip because you got smoke.
Yeah.
Monica, we'll check back in shortly. You know, as this shutdown continues, you are sending us a lot of questions and claims that our very Verify team is working to answer, Madison.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions coming in on Facebook. One even asking if you can use your car as a generator, and so many about these claims that you can make with PG&E. Here's our Jason Puckett with a Verify breakdown.
Let's start with PG&E. Two questions about the company. First, are they paying any claims for spoiled food or medicine during the power shutdowns? Unfortunately, no. A PG&E spokesperson said that, quote, "We do not reimburse customers for losses as power will be shut off for safety." Online, they explained that they don't reimburse claims when there are severe weather concerns or safety issues. You can still file a claim, but when it's after a shutdown like this, they almost never pay. So their stance is no, you can't get reimbursed, but keep in mind, you can always take your claim to a small claims court. Second question. Can I see power outages in my community even if we aren't experiencing the high winds? Well, that's a definite yes. PG&E made a post about this on their site. Basically, they said two things. One, they rely on forecasts. They may shut down power in areas forecast to have bad conditions, but if the weather changes slightly, you may not feel anything. And two, some areas without high winds may be connected to a line that's shut down because it does run through high wind areas. Bottom line, yeah, even if your home isn't directly in strong winds, you can still be in one of the shutdown areas. Finally, a question about generators. They've been selling quickly as all of this has happened, and as it's becoming more difficult to find them, some people are asking if it's safe to use their car as a backup generator. You can, but it's potentially dangerous and you could run out of gas when you need it. So your car is designed to generate electricity, especially when running. But depending on your model, it may not be able to generate a lot. First point, you'll need an inverter, something that uses the carport and converts the car's DC current to an AC one that our devices use. Second, you should run the engine if you're gonna do this. If you just use the battery, you're gonna drain it and will likely only get a couple hours of juice. Third, compare the charge you can generate to what your devices need. If you have an inverter that will generate 150 watts, you're not gonna be able to run a refrigerator or other big devices, and if you try, you can damage them. Finally, think through the downsides. If you use your car as a generator, you're effectively trading your car's gasoline for some time with electronics. And if a fire or medical emergency forced you to have to drive, you could be in trouble. So yeah, you can use a car if you have the right equipment, but make sure you aren't killing your battery or using all your gas, and make sure the fumes from your car can safely vent. Got any other questions for us? Send us an email. With your Verify, I'm Jason Puckett.
One of the other things that we were telling people is not to run your generators indoors.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it seems like something that a lot of people would know already. But last night, Auburn Fire responded to a house in the downtown Auburn area, unfortunately, because of a carbon monoxide leak. The people, though, who were living there, they had the right detectors. Those detectors were
Saved their
working.
lives.
And it saved their lives, according to the City of Auburn Fire Department. Again, a very serious and dangerous situation that just goes to show how much the impact of these power outages has on not only just the power being out, but life at risk too, with other, facets of this.
And it's not just people, tens of thousands of folks are without power in Placer County. And Kevin John spoke to a rancher who is changing his routine to help the horses on his property.
What a shock.
Yep. That is the mood at JR Ranch as they try to get by without power for the second straight day.
We're definitely going through some changes as far as to accommodate everything and making things still work here for the horses especially. They need water, and our well, which is run by a pump, needs electricity to pump the water. So what we've done is, unfortunately, not having the well water, we changed over to irrigation water, which is filling up all their water feeders.
Rich's ranch sits on 5 acres, and he and his wife care for 12 horses here. 3 belong to them, and the other 9 they take care of through their boarding business.
The owners, of course, these are their babies. They're entrusting us to make sure that they're well taken care of. So a lot of them did have concerns over that, and I told them about what we're doing with Plan B, with the irrigation water, taking care of that. So they know that we're on top of it whenever something comes up with their horse, so they didn't really have any fear.
Rich gave me a tour of the ranch and showed me how they use the irrigation water to fill their water feeders. While the ranch has been able to function just fine without power, Rich is counting the hours until the power comes back on.
I understand it's not PG&E's fault, but it's aggravating, totally aggravating.
He is not alone, huh, Madison?
No, definitely not.
So many people are feeling this thing. The latest county to get hit with outages is Kern County in Central California. They are bracing for dangerous fire conditions. That's in addition to the 400,000 customers, as many as 1 million people still without power, even as we speak. So let's take a look at the map, huh, Madison?
Yeah, check this out. You can see here the counties that are being impacted. Some of these numbers are changing as the night goes on. Remember, we've been telling you about the different counties who have the all clear from PG&E. But again, we want to just go over some of the largest areas where this power outage spans. So let's start with Nevada County, which has more than 43,000 customers without power. Then Placer County, which has more than 51,000 customers. Again, Placer County has probably changed a little bit given that Auburn, Loomis, Penryn also will have their power back on, Newcastle as well. El Dorado County now with 50,000 customers without power.
Solano County has about 30,000. Tuolumne still has around 34,000 customers who are affected by the power outage. You can also see on this graphic that 23,000 customers in Calaveras County are still dealing with the power shutoff tonight. Now keep in mind, 228,000 customers did have their power restored, and that number may be even higher as we're starting to hear some of the people who are starting to get their power back. The Bay Area was given the all clear, which does not mean power is back on, especially because crews, they cannot inspect those lines at night. That's the thing that we have to keep in mind. Our Lilia Luciano coming up tonight at 11 on Late News Tonight on ABC. We are going to be talking with those crews, looking at some of the work that they're doing. We'll also be streaming that here on all of our platforms so that if you aren't able to watch on TV, you still will be able to get that information. She's still with those crews and she wants to make sure she has that latest information for you tonight at 11 on the LNT.
Right, and I was looking at her video she posted on her Facebook page, shows they were in really remote areas too. You realize that power lines, the ones they have to inspect, are not only just the ones in the street, right, that you see driving. So it's a more of an eyes up kind of situation where you can say that one looks good or whatever it may be. But she was with crews that were it looked like kind of in the back area of a vegetation, kind of brushy area, hiking kind of those kinds of
that's
conditions.
The thing that we've been trying to stress. People say, well, I don't have any wind in my neighborhood, but it's not necessarily about your neighborhood as much as it is where your power is being generated from. That's why some of these decisions were made according to PG&E. It is something else. I tell you, the Cal Fire chief tweeted that they have responded to more than 200 fire incidents. And as we scroll through here, I'll work through other things, and most of them are contained. This video is from last night's fire in Moraga that forced 140 people to evacuate. More fires popped up early this morning and throughout the day across the area, but it was the quick action from firefighters that has kept these fires from spreading. And that's why we got to get back over to Monica, because Monica, the interesting thing here is, as you were saying, it's hard to say whether or not we've seen the worst of this yet, because this stuff can move so quickly, and we just have to be so thankful for our firefighters who have been in place and ready to go at a moment's notice, Monica.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you were. I was trying to get something ready for another show there.
Yeah.
She's coming.
Multitasking.
She's coming
Multitasking.
But Monica, you were saying that the wind conditions, they are calm for the most part.
Well, for the most part, yeah, through the valley. Now, one area that I did want to point out is through the foothills and the lower elevations of the Sierra. If you take a look at this map right here, you'll notice that everything is pretty much gray except for that small strip all the way through the foothills, through the 80-50 corridor, and then north of Highway 50 stretching up towards Plumas and Sierra counties. It's not that these winds are particularly strong right now. They're just stronger than, say, the valley areas. So we're generally seeing slightly stronger winds in that small region right there through the foothills and Sierra. And we're talking upper foothills, not lower foothills at all. But that is also the region that's going to be under the red flag warning until we head into early tomorrow morning. Everybody else is in the clear. We're out of the red flag warning conditions. But for tonight, heading into those future winds, what are we expecting? Everything quiets down. So by the time we get to tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., you'll notice winds are still at about 3 to 5 miles per hour. That's going to be about it for the day. Nothing really extreme, and winds start to calm down for the Sierra. The only thing that's really still of a concern is the direction of the wind. Given the time of year, everything is so dry right now. And when we have the east winds, those continue to dry everything out as they move from higher elevations down to the lower elevations. We're basically going all over all this land mass here. And then even the Bay Area with San Francisco, still expecting those offshore winds, which again are dry. San Francisco is going to see highs tomorrow right around 80 degrees. So we're still going to be dealing with some of those dry conditions throughout the Bay Area. But the only area that will have that red flag warning is going to be the Sierra foothills and the Sierra through 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Fuel is still very dry.
Monica, thank you so much. And, you know, we want to do a quick little check-in on the sandalwood fire that is burning in the Riverside County area. If we can just take some live pictures now. Wow, you're taking a look at the fire from above, and that glow there you see there on the screen to the right is where the fire is continuing to burn at this hour. Again, this firefighter at last check is at 500 acres. You can kind of see it spread to the left and the right there as well, and also close to some. It's hard to tell, but those other lights, it looks like that's either businesses or buildings of some sort, because there's lights, you know, power lights that are set up too.
The interesting thing here is we're starting to hear, and I want to confirm with our producers, the cause of this fire was burning trash. And so we don't know all of the conditions, but just look at that. Where even as this is why we're here live with you, because this is still a very active situation across the state. Firefighters still tackling this, where we're told at least 2 homes are burning here even as we speak. And as they widen out, you get a feel for just how expansive this thing really is. Look at it, you see hot spots all over there. They're working to try to get it contained, some containment. You kind of see the fire line that they're doing there to try to get some containment. But this is in a neighborhood. Those are
I was
homes
just about
and
to
things of that
say,
nature
it
that
seems
we're
as if
talking
this, the neighborhood we're talking about, and they're now zooming back into that neighborhood. That's in the middle of this fire perimeter, if you will, of where it's already burned. It's really hard for us to tell because of the dark conditions if these homes are intact or not. But again, we do know that dozens of homes are lost in this fire. Again, started by burning trash. It's just, we all play a part when it comes to fire prevention. We just really got to be mindful about that, because it can just be one spark in conditions like this that then take off. But gosh, look at those flames right there, are just whipping around.
Well, and one of the other things that we have been talking about, 74 structures burned in just this fire, and and in a fairly quick amount of time that this has happened. An entire, what was it, mobile home park that went up in flames. And even tonight, and not far there from the interstate, you see cars still moving about.
Is that Highway 60?
As crews are working to try and tackle this thing. 500-acre fire started with burning trash. The breaking news that we are following even as we speak tonight. This is in Southern California. You see the lights around there, so you know that this is an active community, and how close this fire is. We've got eyes from the air. We've got eyes on the ground. We are going to be following this thing throughout the night. One of the main things that we've been trying to stress to people, folks ask, well, why is this? Why are they doing this? Why are we having all of this back-to-back live coverage that we're doing? Well, it's because of this. I mean, this is the thing that we've been warning about for days, is that the fire conditions were just so bad that it would only take something small. Something small is someone burning trash that we see this type of devastation. 500-acre fire that is now burning. An entire mobile home park lost. Still no word on just how many people have lost their homes. We don't have a word on injuries as well either.
Don't. Yeah, and it's so close. I mean, just look at how close it is to these homes, to this highway. Obviously, some people are taking it slow when it comes to driving past this, because how could you not, right? You're staring at this orange glow, these flames in your neighborhood. It's terrifying for so many people right now who have been evacuated, who are wondering what's going to be left of their home if they live near here. Again, these flames are incredibly visible because it's nighttime, so they're glowing. It's really easy to spot what's on fire at this time, and it's hard to see, because it's so dark, which areas are homes that are destroyed or which areas are homes that are still standing. But, you know, as this, okay, there we go. Now we know which ones are actually homes and which ones aren't. So, you know, it's hard to see if they could, I don't know, it's so hard. We're not able to control what that looks like, but we are taking a look at, you just saw where the homes were standing.
It's a community though,
yeah, it's
right?
a community. It's just hard to tell. I guess my point is it's hard to tell what's actually been destroyed and what's not been destroyed with this fire, because it's just so dark out there. But you are seeing active flames, this fire still burning. much more than 500 acres now. That was the last number they gave us, but this fire is not controlled yet. They had a little bit of a containment on it, but that was about 10%.
You know, Monica, if I can, I just want to ask you very quickly, Monica, do we know what the wind conditions are like down there with the gusts or anything like that with this fire? What type of conditions they're facing? Because I tell you, it seems like it's blowing just from the video from my eye here, and that this could be quite the fight for them throughout the night even, as they try and save property, save lives, save homes. This is the fear that so many of us had, that as these conditions moved in, as crews were working to try and tackle these conditions, that it would be difficult to do because of the red flag warning that was in place, Monica.
Yeah, I'm looking to see right now what we have. Now, we have red flag warning conditions there right now, but I just wanted to get, there's
just
so
look at those
much
flames.
that comes up.
I mean, it's just very intense. I mean, you know, we've almost, you see this and you just pray that everyone was able to get out of there before this thing came through, because of the intensity of this. This is not something where you're trying to get the fire out. You're trying to get people out of harm's way.
Absolutely.
You're saying you need to evacuate. You're saying get to safety, and we'll tackle that fire once we've gotten life and gotten people to safety, because this is really intense.
It's scary too. Sorry, Monica, to talk over you really just quick, but look how close those flames are to the highway there. I mean, that was a semi just passing on Interstate 210, right next to where those flames are. What you don't want to see is for that to jump. And then spread to another neighborhood too. So yeah, Monica, if you could talk about the winds here.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing right now is we've got winds anywhere from about 56 miles per hour out of an east direction. So basically what that means is you're going to see the winds coming out of the hills, where, you know, the ocean's going to be off to the west, and they're going to push down towards the ocean. But winds anywhere right around there. I'm seeing a couple of observation sites, and sometimes they'll go out on me, but about 56 miles per hour is about the highest that I'm seeing right now. I'm zooming in even closer just to try to see if I can get down to that specific valley location, and then some of the data goes away from me.
You can just see that smoke.
And look at there's some transmission lines right there.
Oh yeah, right there next to the transmission
Yeah,
line.
and I don't know if power was shut off yet for that part of Southern California. I know, Madison, you were saying it was kind of on and off over the weekend, but
yeah, that's Edison, right?
What's that?
It would be Edison.
It's yeah, SoCal Edison. The topography there, you know, it's very hilly, and so we have that problem with those winds that can drive those flames. What happens is they accelerate as they go down the hill. This, you know, what's surprising to me, though, we have been talking about this fire since earlier this afternoon, and I just checked too, and it still says about 500 acres.
Right.
And it's held at that since about 4 o'clock. So it's been holding at that for about 5.5 hours. I just don't know if they just didn't do another assessment of it, but
an update.
Right.
We do seem to see a fire line that they've been able to get around this.
That's true.
I mean, but the challenge is, though, I mean, you go and you look at, they're just all these hot spots, major hot spots of flames just burning out of control. They're very close to the interstate. And the challenge is, Monica, these red flag warning, how long is that extending for this area tonight?
That'll be through Friday.
Wow.
Yeah, so like in our area, it was supposed to end at 5 o'clock this afternoon. It didn't end until 9. So now we're starting to see that move down into Southern California. We were expecting that too. So again, I'm just trying to get some
Monica,
good observations.
You have been, I mean, Monica has been spot on with this thing the entire time. Monica said around 2 o'clock last night that we would start to see some of the bulk of the winds here, and sure enough, we had our crews out live. Many of you may have been joining us on Facebook and YouTube and our other platforms, and that is where Britt was in Vacaville, and those winds were just she was saying she almost compared it to like tropical storm weather. She was comparing it to, and that is when we start to see some of the fires pop up here in our area. Vacaville even had that small woodpile fire that they were dealing with, and then the Moraga fire that we've been talking about. And so, and then Monica was saying that once we had that it would then transition south. And of course, here we are. We're dealing with this type of experience for so many of our neighbors to the south. We do have video, as I told you, from the air and the ground. Let's go to that video on the ground. We have a reporter describing what they are experiencing.
Oh my goodness.
This is the ground. So it's a living hell for folks there on the ground. I mean, there's no way to try and sugarcoat it for you. This is a live look at the emergency personnel there. Look at the and you can hear the wind. You can hear the winds. Let's just listen in.
Along with all the other places that are on fire tonight here in Southern California. But quite a scene here if you're just joining us, and if you can hear me, hopefully you can. It's quite windy. This is the Yarnell Street exit off of the 210. Started out as a 1 acre fire, and I believe, the 210, you can see the cars traveling, that it's going to jump the 210 soon. Families, people are evacuating. Just a little bit ago, people were here on their phones taking video, and a lot of those people have now left.
These are our reporters there in SoCal talking about this fire right next to the 210. And she's concerned that this fire is going to jump the interstate.
Right, which we were just seeing. I mean, that semi-truck drove right next to the flames. And, you know, it's what happened during the North Bay fires with Coffee Park. Right, Monica, with the Tubbs fire, that one jumped across.
101.
Yeah, it jumped the 101 and went to Coffee Park,
right?
Which no one expected to happen. Coffee Park is a flat area, very residential. There's trees like any normal neighborhood. I would kind of compare it to, like, I don't know, anywhere in Sacramento, really. It's just flat. It's got normal homes and businesses, apartments.
Right. Yeah, there's no real elevation right there. But you come off of I think it's West Mark. And that comes out of the hills and then heads right into the lower elevations where we have more of the established communities there in Santa Rosa. But up the hill, you certainly had many homes, what looked like to me multi-million-dollar homes up there in those hills near Santa Rosa. And then you come down the hill and then you've got vineyards. The Kmart was on fire. They had Coffee Park.
Right.
So much was burning at that point, but you had slightly stronger winds than what we're seeing right here. It looks like from where she's talking about, since I'm hearing her say 210, right? She was saying the 210 looks like it's going to jump the 210. It looks like winds there still coming very much from the north and east, so that's going to be blowing that right over 210 near San Bernardino into the Moreno Valley. But yeah, it definitely would be pushing that fire, exactly what she's talking about, possibly jumping the road there.
The challenging thing, too, is as people are trying to evacuate here, you see crews getting out, trying to direct traffic. I mean, it is just all hands on deck. People running there in the middle of the road. You see perhaps even abandoning their cars as evacuations have been ordered. You see people trying to make their way out. It just gives you chills because this is so familiar to all of us now, these scenes, especially at night. As people, 10 o'clock at night, people perhaps trying to bed down, and yet they are being told, get out, go as fast as you can, take whatever you have and go. And you just know that when you come back, there may be nothing left.
That's very true.
The challenging part of this, too, is for the first responders who are there on scene. We've heard the stories where they say, we're out here, we're doing the best we can, but we know likely our families and our homes are being impacted by this thing. And so the main thing that we want to do as we're covering this, we wanted to let you know that this is still a very active situation here in the state of California, that these red flag warnings, they are still in place for our neighbors. There are people who are still experiencing some very scary situations, and they are now evacuating in Southern California. This is right next to the 210. This is a fire that has been burning most of the day, right? The main things, you all were here earlier this afternoon, and we were live with you, and we were talking about the mobile home park that went up in flames. And now here we are tonight, close to 10 o'clock. There is the reporter there on scene. Do we still have the helicopter image from the air where we can kind of get a feel for just how expansive Because keep in mind, this is just a street corner that she's
Right.
standing on. This is just one example of what is a pretty expansive area where there are hot spots all over this area where crews are trying to notify people that they need to evacuate, that this is a dire scenario that they are facing. Of course, as we saw earlier too, some of that fire was near what appeared to be power or transmission lines. And so that's why we are working to try and bring this to you even as we speak. Let's get back to some of the information that we have been telling you about. PG&E says there can be some exceptions when it comes to their policies for reimbursing people here in Northern California because with the power being shut off, so many people have been impacted by this thing. Although we are getting examples of, not just here in our area, but in Southern California, of why they had such tough decisions to make.
Right.
Because they knew that the conditions that we were going to be experiencing could be ripe for fire danger. And so we heard from the CEO saying, look, we were dealing with hardship and safety. And they said they chose hardship. Well, when it comes to the question of hardship, people want to know, will they be made whole again? So our Brandon Ritterman spoke with PG&E spokesman Jeff Smith today about that.
If it wasn't strictly related to weather, but it was something that PG&E identified that, was a failure on our part, and not in terms of related to the weather, but something outside the weather realm, that might be a situation that could be different. But typically, when it comes to public safety power shutoffs, there would not be a reimbursement.
There's a pretty strong case to be made, though, that the whole thing is a failure on the company's part, right? The whole reason we're having these shutoffs is you haven't improved the grid to the point where it can withstand a weather event like this. That's kind of backward looking. I understand the frustration that customers are experiencing, and I understand that there are criticisms that folks have. In terms of hindsight and Monday morning quarterbacking, I understand that there are folks that will be looking at that, and I appreciate the fact that people have those opinions. Right now, our focus is on being able to restore customers as safely as possible. I don't think it is Monday morning quarterbacking. I think a lot of people out there have an expectation that the grid should be able to run safe in whatever weather California throws at it, and that just simply isn't the fact right now.
Well, there really has been changing weather conditions in the state of California with climate change and other factors that have contributed to all this. But again, I understand that there are customers that are frustrated and that have varying opinions on that. Certainly respect that.
Why should PG&E be allowed to keep its monopoly if this is how things are going to be?
Again, I think that goes back to the root frustration of customers. We know that customers are frustrated.
Okay. All right, that was Brandon Ritterman talking to a PG&E spokesman about the situation, asking some of those tough questions about being reimbursed with food. A lot of people are wondering, okay, well, what gives here? You take away our power for several days and you take away our way of life. And some places didn't even experience winds. We know that that's because they're connected to a larger grid here. Right. So a lot of layers when it comes to this story.
This conversation is just getting started. As Brandon explained in our series, Firepower Money, the government has the power to take away PG&E's monopoly, but would have to pay fair market value for its tens of billions of dollars of equipment. Despite that fact, some local campaigns have popped up to follow in the footsteps of cities like Sacramento and Roseville and take power service away from PG&E Madison.
All right, now we're going to take a little bit of a look back at the fires across Northern California tonight. Okay, the Merrill fire in Contra Costa County is now 40 acres and 90% contained. That's a great news there. That's the one that we were talking about late, or actually early this morning, around 2 a.m. that started in Moraga, forcing evacuations there. Also, the fire on San Bruno Mountain burning dangerously close to transmission lines, now 50% contained. This is the Bay Area city of Brisbane. There were voluntary evacuations as well. Obviously, this one could be seen from a lot of people in the Bay Area because it's up there on the hill ridge there. So some concern in the Bay Area as well. Also tonight, evacuations are still in place in Mariposa County. The Bryceburg fire off Highway 140 near Yosemite National Park has burned over 4,000 acres, only 15% contained at this time. This fire started over the weekend, much more before we knew the power shutoffs were actually going to happen. happen. We were, of course, told they were forecasted to happen, but then a couple days later, we were told it's happening.
And of course, the breaking news that we are following is that fire, the Sandalwood fire. This is a live look from the air. 500 acres have burned so far. We're told that 74 homes, at least 74 homes have burned. And as we scroll through, I'll tell you some more information about what else we know about this fire, because I tell you, we understand that it was started from someone burning trash. Can you believe that? And this is what has sparked. And this is where conditions are now, people being forced to evacuate. And let's get over to Monica to give us an idea of conditions now, Monica.
Yeah, the frightening situation as we head into the night hours. North to northeast winds carrying those flames. Here's 210 right here, San Bernardino, and that's where that reporter was saying it looks like that was going to jump the 210 in Southern California, with the winds really driving it down to the south and west. That's the way that things appear there right now. But unfortunately, winds are going to continue to increase, gusting at times to 65 miles per hour. Humidity as low as 4%. The fuel is so dry, and now we're adding the additional impact of those offshore winds, those Santa Ana winds that can accelerate through the hills with explosive fire growth as they start to head just off the coast there. And this is going to migrate from a Northern California event into a Southern California event. Really getting a good handle on this tonight is going to be critical heading into at least tomorrow, if not Saturday, for all of the areas, particularly in Southern California.
Monitoring all those fires. There are so many of them that have started. Again, the one in Southern California, we're just talking about the Saddlebank fire, really dangerous conditions. Those the scene from the ground is just incredible to watch that happen. People right as we speak right now are evacuating, pretty much running for their lives to make sure that they're to safety, because the fire, the flames, also just the winds are whipping and making it very dangerous for so many people.
Horrible conditions. We are going to stop down for just a moment. We have several crews, as we said, spanned out all across California, bringing you the very latest on this developing story. We'll see you back here live in less than an hour. See you then.
Get up-to-the-minute information during the largest planned power outage in state history, affecting 800,000 customers in more than 30 counties. Be the first to know breaking updates and alerts delivered straight to your phone. Download the ABC 10 News app now.